Hello, fabulous humans, and welcome to Miss Burzek's wonderful Washington, D.C. adventure. Our third and final stop is the Supreme Court of the United States, which is housed in the building right behind us. Although it may look like old architecture and like it's been here a while, it's actually only 82 years old, compared to the Capitol building, which we saw earlier, and the White House, which we saw earlier, are over 200 years old each. The Supreme Court, or the Judicial Branch, has been around since 1787. However, it did not get its permanent home until 1932. Before that, it rotated throughout the United States, from New York to Pennsylvania to Trenton, New Jersey, wherever it could find a home. Order, order, order in the court is something that you might hear as Judge Judy enters the courtroom. However, the Supreme Court works vastly different than a lot of the court shows you are used to seeing on TV. The Supreme Court of the United States is the highest court in the land, and part of its job is to ensure that checks and balances and separation of power continue to work. While checks and balances and separation of powers ensure that the three branches have equal power, arguably, the Supreme Court has one of the most important jobs. Article 3 of the Constitution gives the Supreme Court the power of judicial review, meaning that they get to check or make sure that the legislative branch and the executive branch are making laws and orders that are constitutional. Not only do they decide if laws are constitutional or unconstitutional, but also part of their job is to decide controversies between two groups. They are the interpreters of the Constitution, meaning they decide what the Constitution means based off of their knowledge of the Constitution. Definitely a lot different than Judge Judy. Let's go inside and look at some of those differences in depth. First thing you'll notice is there are 9 seats up front and no room for a jury to sit. That is because in the Supreme Court there are 9 justices or judges, not just one. And there is no jury. A jury is not deciding guilt or innocence in the Supreme Court. Rather, the justices are deciding whether or not someone's rights have been violated because of a mistake made by a lower court. Another difference that is hard to notice is the type of cases each court takes. The lower courts have to take all the cases and try them. However, because the Supreme Court isn't deciding guilt, but rather constitutional rights, if they read your case and don't think your rights were violated, then they can reject that case. On average, the Supreme Court gets over 10,000 requests to hear a case a year, but they only agree to hear about 80. That means that with the other 9,920 cases, the Supreme Court felt no right had been violated, or an earlier Supreme Court case already defined the right in question. Now, you may be wondering, how do I get to wear such a fancy robe? And in all reality, the answer is pretty simple. Just know the president. There are no official qualifications to be a Supreme Court justice. You just have to be nominated by the president and confirmed by the Senate. All of these courts work together to ensure one main goal, that our rights as citizens are protected. And yes, decide if someone is guilty or innocent, but even then, they're still making sure their rights are protected, like their right to a jury and their right to a lawyer. And even though our fantabulous adventure can't take us to all 108 courts at the federal level, we still have a fantastic foundation on what the Supreme Court does. See you later.